All right, good morning everybody. So it is a beautiful morning here in July in Phoenix, Arizona. As you guys can see, sun is shining, it's beautiful outside, nice and warm, got a nice little breeze today. So today I thought I would plant my bare root fruit tree. So I got this bare root fruit tree from the Arizona Rare Fruit Growers bare root sale that they just had. They just had their pickup. And I didn't order this one, but I fell in love with it when I got down there. So I thought I would pick this one up. So this is called a Tamaulipan persimmon. And if you guys haven't, get this chicken down for a second. Okay, come on. All right, you gotta chill right there.
Yeah.
Just hang out right there. Just hang out right there. All right, so this is a Tamaulipan persimmon, bare root, which is the way that I prefer to plant persimmons. And this is the way I've had the best luck on persimmons because I've tried probably 30 different persimmon trees because these are my favorite fruit on the entire planet. And they are very hard to grow here in Phoenix, Arizona because they grow so slow and they just burn up. They don't have very long to adapt before the heat comes on here. So I've had the most luck bare root. The potted ones that I've tried, they've all failed. Every single one of them have failed. And the ones that have taken, which I have now around the property, are the ones that I planted from bare root. So this is another one that I'm going to add to the collection. And this is an astringent persimmon, so this is one that you want to let get soft before you eat it. Otherwise it'll pucker your mouth. And it says extra large, which in Arizona, I'm not too sure about. It's probably get just medium size here. Tender, sweet, juicy. Ripens November to December. So a little bit of a later fruit. And yeah, so I got this tree, picked this tree up. And you see that it's out here soaking in a giant flower pot full of water. So as soon as I got home, which I transported it very correctly too. So you want to put the root system in a all right, come on, you're gonna have to go over here for a minute. Come on. Come on. To hang out over here with the bananas. Here, check it out. There's bananas. Okay. Flower pot. Full of water. So you want to transport these correctly by bringing them home in a plastic bag around the root system and keeping that nice and moist the whole time. You do not want to let this root system dry up. If you let it dry up one time, it's pretty much toast at that point. So keep these nice and moist. Either keep it in some mulch if you've got longer to plant it, or if you know you're going to plant it within the next 24 hours, then what I do is I bring it home and I spray the root system off first. So I take off all the excess dirt that was attached to the root system. This has a really cool root system. It's black, being a persimmon. And so hopefully you guys can see it out here in the sunlight. It doesn't really pick up in the shadows, so hopefully this will pick up good. So I've got this soaking in a bucket of water, and starting here at the root flare, I don't have all the rest of this submerged underneath the water, and I've only had it in here for about 24 hours. So after about 24 hours, you want to change the water just so that it's got more oxygen in the water, because that's what ends up happening is the oxygen just goes away and they just kind of drown in there. So don't leave them in here forever, obviously. And that water's nice and cool. I've got this in the sun here for demonstration purposes only, just so you guys could see this. And so there's another step that I do that I started over just to show you guys the process on this. So let me do that real quick. Alrighty, so here's what I do for the soaking process. Change hands here. So usually what I do is I'll crack an egg in here while that soaks overnight. Just like so, and then I'm going to turn the water on. I'm going to kind of shoot this in here till it's a little frothy, so let me go ahead and pause it again. All right, so when you're done here, then you should have that egg that has frothed up in that water, and it's going to kind of look like soap. Don't let it freak you out. And I let it kind of sit in that little protein soup for the 24 hours, and a good amount of that egg and that protein attaches to the root system of the tree. So let's go on over here to the hole for a minute. Let's talk about the hole and how we're going to plant this, and we'll let this just kind of sit here for a second, and I'll come grab him here in a minute. So let's talk about where we're going to plant this thing. So this will be going here in the front yard, and you see that I've got quite a microclimate here that's built in the middle. So I've got the house, then I've got stronger fruit trees around the perimeter, shade trees, whatnot, and they've kind of enclosed this area in so that it's like a shell of protection. So it is really nice and cool in here, substantially cooler than just right out over here to the side where the full sun is. So now I can pretty much plant anything I want in this area without worrying about it suffering. So there's a couple things in here already. Got this star fruit here. This is flying tongue, and this one is he's pretty loaded full of fruit too. And I was a little bit surprised by that because of how dark it is in here. This is more of a avocado or persimmon type area, but he does have quite a bit of fruit in here. And then also I have in here another persimmon, and I put this one in as a bare root last year, and this one is a, let's see, this is a focus. Okay, it's not going to focus. So this is a coffee cake persimmon, and this one did pretty well last year, especially being a bare root. So I cut this one way back, and it grew, and it actually fruited this first year. So I did get 2 little fruits off this guy at the very beginning of the season, and then I just kind of let him grow. So he did grow quite a bit more, and then he grew quite a bit taller actually. He grew this big whip that grew up here another probably 3 or 4 feet, and I just cut that off just recently to make him a little bit shorter, so he will be a little bit shorter, a little bit bushier. And then I knew I was going to put another persimmon in here, another twin persimmon, so I wanted to keep the space a little bit closer on these guys. So then another thing I have in here is an avocado, and this is an avocado I got at Lowe's, and this one's really kind of taken off because these start really small. You see by the stick here, you know how big these are when you buy them, and this one has grown quite a bit in here in the last year. So I'm going to put another couple avocados in here, probably. I'm thinking maybe one over here and one over here. So I've got the 3 avocado trees in this spot, and they're protected by this lemon. So this is going to be a perfect microclimate for this new persimmon tree that I'm going to put in. So let's talk about this hole here. So as you can see, there are some gigantic roots that run through this hole that I just dug. So these roots, first of all, a couple of notes about that also. So these roots are coming from this mesquite tree that is behind me here. And so a couple of things about that, and I realize desert trees or native trees are a little bit different, but they always say that your roots, if you amend the soil, that the roots will encircle and they'll stay in that amended soil for a long time before they hit the wall of native soil and come out of that native soil. And this is kind of more or less proof positive that they do not do that, and they come out of that thing pretty straight. Here's the tree, pretty straight and deep. So these are still probably a foot deep at least, these giant anchors, and then they come straight off that tree. 2 go this direction, 1 goes this direction, and you can't even budge these. So obviously that tree's well anchored, and it's not an issue with the roots staying in that hole that you dig because you amend it. Because that's the theory, is that this soil is so compacted that those roots are going to want to stay in here, and they don't stay in there very long. I tell you what, because that tree grows So it has to support itself. So what do you think it's going to do? It's going to grow roots out far to support just the weight of the tree blowing around in the wind, if nothing else. So yeah, it's got these giant ties here. And so I've got this hole probably, I don't know, I want to say 30 inches wide by about 24 inches deep, if not 30 inches deep. And yeah, I ran across these roots, and I didn't want to destroy these roots because there's a couple things about roots in a hole. So let's talk about this a little bit. So one thing I could have done, obviously, is cut these roots here and there and there and there and expose the whole hole. Well, there's a couple of problems with that. One is you've just cut those anchors, and so that tree's not well anchored anymore. And also you've cut that root and you've exposed that juicy end there to the soil that you're going to be putting right back in again. So if you were going to do something like that, I would cut this root off here, and I would let it dry overnight, or the next couple days. I wouldn't put the tree back in the hole. I would let that kind of scar over before I put the tree back in the hole. But there's a couple things with that too. So you'll notice that I didn't damage these roots at all with the shovel, or I tried not to anyway. There's a couple little nicks maybe, but otherwise pretty clean, because I didn't want to induce any infection into this mesquite tree that's behind me by damaging these roots and then putting wet soil and compost and everything right back in there on that without that little wound healing. I don't really like to do that. And then the other thing too is I've noticed with trees like this, not all trees do this, but sometimes if you either cut that off there or if you damage this root, what ends up happening is it grows all these little hair roots that come off that tip now. And the problem with that is all those little hair roots are going to come in here and they're going to surround your new little tree and choke it off from those nutrients and space. So they'll just take up its space like grass does, you know, so now it can't expand and grow. So if you don't damage these at all, hopefully that won't happen. You won't have those little roots that come off. And it's not because it's wet, because you see the whole ground's wet, everything's wet. So if those roots were going to be there now, they would be here now. But you can actually create them by cutting this off, and it'll grow all that big mass right here, and then your new little tree can't make it. So if you're going to plant amongst roots like this, then you got to be very careful with them, because obviously you're going to hit them when you're planting into a food forest, but you just got to be careful. So I thought this was a neat little opportunity to talk about roots that you're going to run into of other trees. So, okay, on to planting. So hopefully all those little tips helped. We are going to now plant this tree. And this hole, it doesn't seem that big. It only seems about the size of this 15-gallon container. But soil's weird in the fact that when it's compacted and you dig it out, it multiplies. So I ended up digging about 4 of these big containers of dirt out of this hole. That's the native. So then I put one of it around the berm area to support the berm, and then I end up getting rid of 2 of the bins, and I keep one of the bins for my premix when I do my 50-50 mix here. So there's a little bit in here now, but this is just from the topsoil. Most of this is the native soil. And so what I have out here is I've got 2 bags of my compost, and this is the Orchard Gold planting compost. And what I like to do is I like to plant with two bags of this and one of these drums full, and probably another or maybe half drum over there full of dirt. And since I can't really mix this 50-50 in the hole because I've got all these roots in the way, what I'll end up doing is I'll probably just do it over here in a pile. So I've got a empty tree well here, and what I'm going to do next is I will mix. I'm going to go ahead and open these guys up, and I will mix the soil together in this hole, and then I can kind of backfill it into here as I'm holding my bare root. So I might have to do this in little steps here. So yes, I'm going to cut these guys open, and I'm going to start to mix my soil. So I'm going to stop it here for a moment and get things kind of prepared. I'm going to mix the soil 50-50, make a good mix here. This just takes time, so it's going to be boring anyway. I'm going to mix it here, and then I'm going to put in some at the bottom of this hole as a back filler. And then the next video, I'll grab the tree and we will start to get the tree in the ground here. So, all right, guys, thank you for watching.